I am Sarah Jenkins, a 32-year-old finance director. Thanksgiving was always a performance, but this year, I was the star victim. My father, Richard, addressed the entire table. He praised my sister, Brooke, for her generous financial dedication before turning his gaze and the spotlight onto me. And then there's Sarah. We appreciate the gesture, dear, but did you really think $60 was an appropriate contribution for this huge family dinner? Some people just don't understand responsibility. The silence was deafening. Why would a successful finance director deliberately contribute only $60? The real question is, what was the $5,000 secret they were unknowingly giving Brooke the credit for, and what happened when I cut that lifeline? That public mockery wasn't new. I grew up in Brooke's shadow. She was the golden child, effortlessly charming, needing less validation, and always the preferred subject of my parents' endless bragging. My existence was defined by comparison. I was the responsible one, the quiet, analytical, highly accomplished daughter who was simultaneously treated as the lesser child, the scapegoat for any family failure. I learned early that their approval was a currency I could never truly afford. I knew I couldn't buy their love, but what they didn't know was that I was buying their lifestyle. How did I, the scapegoat, manage to become the secret financial backbone of the family, and why was I still paying for acceptance? Outside this house, I was a finance director. I managed multi-million-dollar budgets, making critical, complex decisions daily. But at this dinner table, I was just the daughter who contributed $60. That contrast was the entire theme of my adult life. What my family didn't know was that for the last 5 years, I was the one funding their comfortable lifestyle. I secretly wired $5,000 every month into an anonymous account, a desperate, futile attempt to earn the approval they only ever gave Brooke. I was sending $5,000, yet they mocked my $60. Why did I allow them to take credit for my generosity, and what finally pushed me to turn off that automatic transfer right before the Thanksgiving turkey was served? I buried myself in finance because I naively believed money was the language my parents spoke. If I could achieve real professional success, the kind Brooke never pursued, surely they would finally see me, acknowledge my worth, and give me the love I craved. I worked twice as hard, staying late, skipping holidays, fueling my drive with that desperate, persistent hope. The goal wasn't just the finance director title, it was the emotional validation that I thought came with it. That determined ambition became my independent path. I thought the title would buy respect. But even as a finance director, I was still the $60 daughter. When did I realize that success wasn't enough? And how did my parents use my career achievements to praise my less successful sister instead? I could handle Richard's sarcasm, but then my mother, Carol, chimed in. She didn't just agree with him, she explicitly denied my secret contribution, sealing the public rejection. I saw my years of desperate hope crumble in real time. Don't take credit for Brooke's generosity, Sarah. That $5,000 monthly wire? That's Brooke. She's always been the thoughtful one, the one who genuinely cares about our well-being. That was the final knife twist. My sacrifice meant nothing. The humiliation wasn't about the $60, it was the realization they would never, ever acknowledge my value, no matter what I gave them. The hurt boiled over and hardened into ice-cold resolve. The game was over. They just told me my $5,000 meant nothing and belonged to Brooke. What happens when the finance director who controls the money realizes the only way to earn respect is to bankrupt the people who betrayed her? Their denial of my contribution was an insult to the truth of my life. I recalled years of working double time, giving up vacations, and pulling all-nighters to earn those promotions. Every milestone was quietly achieved, fueled by the desperate, toxic hope that this achievement would finally break through. My parents knew the sacrifices I made. I'd send them updates on my promotions, only to receive silence or a quick reply asking if I'd spoken to Brooke lately. My determination wasn't just ambition, it was a desperate, Sisyphean effort to balance an equation that was rigged from the start. And all of that, all the sweat and late nights, was dismissed for a paltry $60 contribution while they celebrated my ghost funding. The injustice crystallized into pure, cold action. The $60 insult was the last straw for a decade of unrecognized sacrifice. But what was the specific, final action I took on my phone right there at the Thanksgiving table that changed their financial reality forever? The ultimate insult was the comparison loop. When I got my finance director promotion, Richard said, "That's nice, but Brooke is trying to save the environment with her marketing campaign." My mother would always add, "Brooke is doing meaningful work, Sarah. Yours is just numbers." Brooke, the marketing manager, was praised for trying to start a small business, while my multi-million-dollar deals were mocked because they lacked soul. My best was never enough, but Brooke's minimum effort was celebrated as revolutionary. The resentment was a physical weight I carried for years. Sitting there, hearing Richard dismiss my existence for $60 while celebrating the life I secretly paid for. The resentment became unbearable. It wasn't about seeking approval anymore, it was about stopping the disrespect. I looked down at my phone, accessing my banking app. That banking app held the key to my parents' entire financial stability. What exactly did I do with that $5,000 automatic transfer while my parents were watching me from across the Thanksgiving table, and what was the immediate fallout? I didn't reach this breaking point alone. Weeks before, my mentor, Alex, had given me the clarity I desperately needed. His words echoed in my mind right there at the table, cutting through the noise of my father's mockery. He always said, "Sarah, your value is an internal constant. It is not an external variable dependent on someone else's approval. You are a finance director. Start setting boundaries with the people who constantly overdraw on your emotional account." That day at Thanksgiving, I didn't see my parents. I saw two entities overdrawing on an account that had reached its limit. I suddenly understood. The $5,000 wasn't paying for their acceptance, it was funding my own self-betrayal. It was time to close that account permanently. That mentorship changed everything. I realized that my financial power was also my boundary. How did I use the $60 insult as the perfect camouflage to silently execute my $5,000 financial revenge? And what did my parents do when they heard the notification? Following Alex's advice wasn't instant freedom, it was a slow, deliberate reconstruction of my inner self. I stopped checking my phone for their calls. I started trusting my own judgment on financial deals and, more importantly, on personal relationships. My personal growth became exponential the moment I stopped chasing their shifting, impossible standards. Success was no longer a title on a card, it was the quiet confidence of knowing my worth regardless of their opinion. My new internal metric, peace over approval. Ironically, the $5,000 monthly transfer, the very thing intended to buy their acceptance, became my secret source of control. It was a paradox. I had the ultimate power over their comfort. Yet I still chose to sacrifice my peace for the hope of their love. That Thanksgiving, the power dynamic was about to reverse completely. I finally chose peace over their approval. What was the exact moment at the dinner table that transformed my quiet confidence into a public, financial declaration of war? And how did I deliver the ultimate mic drop? 2 days before Thanksgiving, I took action. I logged into my anonymous account. I saw the standing order, auto transfer of $5,000, scheduled for the 25th. That $60 contribution to the meal was a test. I needed to know if they truly valued my presence over my money. I didn't cancel the payment yet, but I lowered my Thanksgiving contribution to that minimal $60. It was a silent challenge. I drove to their house, every mile feeling heavier than the last, knowing I was crossing a financial Rubicon. I knew one of two things would happen: silence or public humiliation. Despite everything, a small, irrational part of me hoped for a miracle. Maybe they'd changed. Maybe they'd welcome me with genuine affection. That flicker of hope was quickly extinguished by the deep-seated fear of the inevitable. You can't enter a lion's den without being prepared to fight. I put on my armor, the calm, analytical face of the finance director. I rehearsed my exit in my mind. The plan was no longer about gaining respect, it was about ensuring my peace. If they chose mockery, I would choose silence, and their future would reflect their choice. I had my phone in my pocket. The banking app was open, ready to execute the ultimate financial boundary. The $5,000 transfer was still pending, a loaded gun waiting for the final, public insult. I was prepared to walk away and take their security blanket with me. They chose mockery. They chose the $60 insult over the $5,000 truth. What was the exact, three-step process I took on my phone right there at the table to stop the transfer? And how did I announce my financial revenge to a stunned room full of relatives? The $60 insult, Brooke's smug smile, and my mother's denial of the $5,000, it hit me in a single, catastrophic wave. A lifetime of rejection was condensed into that one painful moment at the Thanksgiving table, surrounded by distant, judging relatives. Some people just don't have the selfless heart that Brooke does. Thank goodness we raised one of you to understand real family responsibility. His words weren't aimed at $60, they were aimed at defining my entire worth in front of the whole family. I felt the familiar burn of tears, but years of emotional suppression kicked in. I didn't cry. Instead, I analyzed. This wasn't about the money or the turkey. This was them telling me, for the final time, that the scapegoat's efforts would never be recognized. Alex's voice resonated. They constantly overdraw on your emotional account. I saw their reliance on my $5,000 not as love, but as leverage. Their comfortable life, the very thing they were celebrating, was built on a foundation of my silent sacrifice. I reached into my pocket, my fingers finding my phone. Under the glare of the chandelier, I opened the banking app. It took 3 silent, cold taps. Cancel auto transfer $5,000. Effective immediately. It was the quietest, most powerful financial decision I had ever made. I stood up calmly. The room fell silent. I apologize. Brooke only sent $60. I've just canceled the monthly $5,000 transfers from my account. I don't take credit for Brooke's generosity, but you won't take credit for mine either. Richard and Carol's faces went white. Their comfortable, secure future just vanished in the span of one sentence. The whole table froze, processing the devastating financial truth. Brooke looked genuinely confused. I dropped my napkin. The silence was the sound of $5,000 disappearing forever. What was the chaotic aftermath when I walked out? What did the family group chat look like? And how quickly did the calls for forgiveness start pouring in? I didn't rush. The moment I dropped my napkin, I turned and walked away. Every single eye was glued to me, but I didn't look back. My movement was slow, deliberate, the final, undeniable period at the end of a very long sentence. Behind me, the dam broke. I heard Richard's sharp, panicked voice, "Sarah. What are you doing? You can't just," and Carol's confused, accusatory cry, "Brooke, tell her. Tell her we appreciate your support." Their fear was palatable. It was the sound of their comfort shattering. I heard Brooke's weak, confused stammer, "Mom, I don't know what she's talking about. I only sent the $60. Her shock was genuine. She was just as caught up in the lie as our parents. Except she benefited directly from their delusion. The silence from the relatives was the most satisfying part. They were witnesses. They had heard the $60 insult and the $5,000 retraction. The narrative they'd been fed for years, Brooke the generous hero, Sarah the selfish failure, had just been obliterated by a cold, hard financial fact. I walked through the living room, past the photos, Brooke's graduation, Brooke's promotions, Brooke's engagement. None of my achievements were on those walls. The emptiness I felt wasn't pain, it was the liberating realization that my peace was out here, outside the frame. Stepping out the door felt like stepping out of a toxic skin suit. I reached my car, got in, and locked the door. I took a deep, shuddering breath, the first real breath of freedom in 32 years. I didn't speed off, I simply drove away, leaving the chaos to simmer. Revenge is about balance. They took my value and my peace for years. I took their financial stability in one cold, calculated move. My emotional ledger was finally balanced. The quiet in the car was beautiful, an absolute contrast to the desperate, seeking silence I was used to. I was now fully alone, and I was exactly where I needed to be. The burden of chasing their acceptance was gone. My independence, financial, emotional, and physical, was now complete. The $5,000 was mine again, and so was my future. I walked out of the house, but I walked into my freedom. How quickly did the reality of $5,000 per month disappearing hit them, and what toxic, desperate excuses did my parents use in their frantic messages to try and pull me back? I didn't need to see their faces to know the effect. My announcement had the force of a bomb dropping right onto the perfectly set dinner table. Richard and Carol were statues. The moment of triumph wasn't loud, it was the eerie, absolute silence that followed my cold, final statement. Richard was the first to move, grabbing Carol's arm. The look on his face wasn't anger, it was pure, unadulterated financial horror. Their entire comfortable retirement, the lavish cruise planned for next year, all of it depended on that reliable, secret $5,000 flow, and it was gone. Brooke was completely paralyzed. The $5,000. That wasn't me? She realized her parents had not only lied to everyone else but had lied to her too, letting her take credit for her successful sister's generosity. The golden child narrative was based on my hidden bank transfers. The relatives, initially shocked, started calculating. They remembered Richard boasting about their generous daughter and the recent trips they'd taken. They suddenly understood that the person they mocked for $60 was the person funding the entire family status. Carol, recovering quickly, didn't apologize. She lunged for me as I walked past. "Get back here, Sarah. Do you want to embarrass us in front of the whole family? This is Thanksgiving." "You ruin everything." "I didn't ruin Thanksgiving, Mother. I simply removed the source of your comfort. You chose to value $5,000 over my presence. Now you get neither." My voice was a low, steady hum, devoid of the emotion she wanted to exploit. Richard sat back down, head in his hands. The turkey suddenly seemed less appealing. The expensive wine tasted bitter. Their future, the easy life they took for granted, was now a huge, six-figure hole, and they had just publicly insulted the only person who could fill it. I paused at the door, just for a second. I didn't look at my parents, but at the bewildered faces of the relatives. I left them with the truth. My family always chose their narrative over reality. They chose Brooke over me, and now they had to live with the consequences of that choice. I exposed the lie and walked into my freedom. What unexpected ally did I meet in the driveway who validated my entire decision? And how did my parents use the remaining family to try and manipulate me into coming back? I was halfway to my car when I heard a quiet voice. "Sarah? Wait up." It was my Uncle Ted, Richard's older brother, who always seemed to sit quietly at the edges of the family drama. Seeing a friendly face was the first crack in my calm facade. Ted walked up, not judging, just observing. "I heard it all, kid. Every last word. I'm sorry you had to do that on Thanksgiving, but I'm glad you finally did it. You deserved better than $60, and you certainly deserved better than them." That moment of external validation, the recognition that I wasn't crazy, that the injustice was real, it nearly broke me. I hadn't cried inside, but standing there, the relief made my shoulders slump. "Thank you, Ted. I had to stop the payment. I know you did, sweetie." Richard always played favorites. He did it with me and him when we were young. I left years ago. Best decision I ever made. That $5,000 kept them comfortable, but it kept you trapped. You paid your dues, Sarah. They will call. They will guilt you. They will try every toxic trick in the book. Be ready to block. You set a boundary today, Sarah. Now, you defend it. Don't go back for any reason. Your peace is worth more than their comfort. I finally looked up, really looking at him. I won't. I'm done. Ted smiled. It wasn't the fake, surface smile I saw inside, it was a genuine, empathetic connection. For the first time that day, I felt genuinely seen and valued, not for my money, but for my courage. We hugged quickly. Drive safe. And enjoy your freedom. I got into my car. As I backed out of the driveway, Ted gave me a slow, knowing nod. That silent gesture of approval meant more than all the applause my parents had ever given Brooke. The weight was truly gone. I was driving away from a toxic past and towards an unknown, yet entirely mine, future. The $5,000 I'd just saved was my freedom fund. The conversation with Ted was the final piece of emotional accounting I needed to confirm I'd done the right thing. Uncle Ted's validation sealed my resolve. What was the first frantic text message Richard sent me? What did I do to secure my boundaries? And how quickly did the family's financial stability begin to visibly crumble? The morning after, I checked my bank account. The $5,000 was there. Not sent, not wasted on validation, just mine. It felt like a massive promotion I'd given myself. Financially, this was the greatest success of my career. I felt a surge of cold, analytical pride. The phone, however, was a battleground. Richard sent texts demanding I explain myself to the family. Carol sent paragraphs of emotional blackmail, ranging from her failing health to accusations of abandonment. I blocked them both. The silence I craved was finally here, but it was aggressive. Brooke called, her voice genuinely strained. Sarah, what is going on? Mom and Dad are losing it. I need you to just call them back. They're telling everyone you're having a mental breakdown. She wasn't malicious, just self-centered and unable to cope with the disruption. Blocking them brought immediate relief, but it was quickly followed by an unexpected hollowness. I had won. I had proven my point. I had established the ultimate boundary. But the people I had desperately sought approval from for 30 years were now permanently cut off. My apartment, usually a haven of quiet productivity, suddenly felt isolating. Success at work was still success, but there was no one left to share the real victories with, the small moments of personal growth, the joy of the $5,000 retained. Meanwhile, the financial dominoes were already falling. Ted called me a week later. Richard had defaulted on a boat payment. Carol was panicked because the cleaning service and private golf membership payments were bouncing. My parents were financially dependent on me, and they never even realized it. The revenge was complete, but the cost was the final, definitive severing of the family tie. I had traded the potential, albeit false, warmth of a family connection for absolute, non-negotiable peace. It was a price I was willing to pay, but it didn't mean the heart didn't ache. I focused on channeling that emptiness into productive self-investment. I took the $5,000 and invested it wisely. That money wasn't just a symbol of revenge, it was the foundation of my real independent life, built on truth, not on buying love. I achieved peace, but my parents were spiraling. How did my family attempt to leverage the extended relatives against me? And what was the absolute last text message I sent Richard before blocking him permanently? I was blocks away when the phone lit up. Richard was first. What was that performance? You've humiliated us. You need to return immediately and apologize to your mother and Brooke. Cancel the transfer cancellation now, Sarah. No concern, just a demand for financial servitude. Carol followed. I can't believe you did this on Thanksgiving. Your father is so stressed his blood pressure is spiking. You will be responsible if anything happens to him. Brooke is crying. You ruined everything. Please, Sarah, we need that money. Richard's panic wasn't just about retirement, it was about covering his secret boat and golf club debts. I knew, as finance director, where they were exposed. The $5,000 wasn't for comfort, it was a desperate lifeline for their extravagant, unsustainable lifestyle. Later, a message from Brooke arrived. I don't understand. Mom just admitted that the $5,000 wasn't me, but she said I still had to take credit so Dad wouldn't be embarrassed. Did you really send it every month? I thought my marketing business was supporting them. That was the final, devastating piece of the truth. Brooke was a victim of their manipulation too. My parents hadn't just used me as a cash machine, they had used me as the invisible, selfish scapegoat to make their golden child look better. Their entire public image, the proud parents of the generous Brooke, was built on the back of my paycheck. Their need for external status was so great that they actively maintained a harmful, multi-year lie, punishing the contributor and rewarding the passive recipient. I had sacrificed my self-respect, my holidays, and my emotional energy, buying into their narrative that if I just worked harder, I could earn my place. But my place was fixed, the outsider, the provider whose generosity must remain secret. The moment Brooke confirmed the lie, my guilt vanished. They didn't just reject my $60, they stole my identity and my relationship with my sister for their vanity. This wasn't just about money. It was about moral accountability. My financial retaliation was not revenge, it was justice. I typed one final message to Richard and Carol. Your comfort is no longer my responsibility. Brooke knows the truth. Deal with your own finances. Do not contact me again. Then, I executed the permanent, satisfying block. Silence, real silence, descended. Brooke called once more. I saw her name flash, Brooke, sister. I ignored it. I needed to let her process the truth herself, without my intervention. My focus shifted from their wreckage to my rebuilding. I was free to be Sarah, the finance director, not the cash cow. My peace was expensive, but invaluable. I knew that within weeks, the default notices would start arriving. The boat, the golf club, maybe even the house itself, all were at risk. The financial consequences of their moral corruption were about to become very, very real. I pulled over to the side of the road, looked out at the city lights, and smiled. It was the first honest smile I'd had in years. The revenge wasn't the end of the story. It was the foundation of the rest of my life. My next move, finding a real, honest connection. The shocking truth exposed their toxic game. What was the ultimate financial blow they suffered next, and how did I finally, years later, find a true sense of belonging and peace that money could never buy? The weeks following Thanksgiving were shockingly quiet. The constant, low hum of anxiety that had defined my life for 32 years vanished. I finally experienced real silence, not the temporary reprieve before the next family crisis. I didn't spend the $5,000 I saved, I invested it. It was the physical manifestation of my boundary. Every month, seeing that balance grow reminded me that my value was no longer tied to my ability to fund someone else's delusion. I started funding my own future. My parents, blocked, started leveraging the extended family. Cousin Laura sent a text, Sarah, your mother is devastated. You have to understand that families fight, but they always come back together. Just call them. Please don't be so cold. A week later, I received an email from an old, shared address, a desperate attempt. We are willing to forget the Thanksgiving outburst if you just restore the transfer. We know you hate Brooke, but she's family. We can't pay the mortgage without the transfer. The words that once would have sent me into a spiral of guilt now had no effect. I saw the truth clearly, their love was entirely conditional on my money. They weren't asking for a relationship, they were asking for a bailout. I simply deleted the email. I finally prioritized therapy, something I'd put off for years. I learned to practice self-compassion. The $5,000 wasn't just savings, it represented the thousands of dollars I had previously spent trying to buy affection. Now, I was spending that money on healing myself. I mourned the loss, not of the family I had, but the family I desperately wished I had. Grief is necessary for growth. I accepted that the parents I needed didn't exist, and the version of family they offered was too toxic to keep. I changed my phone number and email address. It was the final, physical act of severing the tie. There was no going back. The emotional recovery was complete when I realized that being alone was infinitely safer and more peaceful than being constantly criticized and financially drained. I found my peace, but the financial dominoes were still falling for my parents. What were the definitive consequences they faced? The loss of their house, the boat, or something even bigger? And how did Brooke react when she realized the true extent of their debt and deceit? 3 months passed. The only way I tracked their descent was through Uncle Ted, who remained the family informant. The first domino to fall was Richard's beloved boat. It was seized publicly. Ted said Richard was humiliated, arguing frantically with the repossession agents in his front yard. Next came the golf club membership. That was Carol's social life. When the club notified her membership was terminated due to non-payment, she reportedly screamed at the manager and blamed me. My parents were not suffering financially yet, they were suffering a massive loss of status. Brooke was finally facing the truth about her own small income. She had assumed her $5,000 contribution was the only thing they needed. But now she was forced to confront the mountain of debt their luxury lifestyle demanded. She realized my $5,000 was a drop in Richard's bucket. Then came the second wave of contact attempts. Brooke bypassed the block via an old university friend of mine. "Sarah, I need to talk to you." They lied about everything. "They're going to lose the house. I don't know what to do. Please, just reply to me. It's not about the money anymore. It's about Mom and Dad." My old, programmed reaction would have been to rush in and fix it. But I didn't. I calmly messaged the friend, "Tell Brooke I wish her and our parents the best. I cannot be their financial lifeline or their counselor. This is their problem to solve. I have moved on." The house was the major threat. Richard had taken out a massive, interest-only mortgage to fund his lavish spending years ago. The house was not fully owned, it was a financial time bomb waiting for my $5,000 transfer to fail. Their entire facade was about to crumble. Brooke's despair was real, but it was born from complacency. She was sheltered by the lie, enjoying the status while I took the heat. She never questioned the source of their endless flow of money. Now, the luxury was gone, and the truth demanded accountability from her too. Ted called later. He sounded exhausted. "They've received the foreclosure notice, Sarah. They're blaming you, of course. But they're selling the big Mercedes. They're going to lose everything they thought defined them." I felt a hollow sadness, not joy. My victory was complete, not because they suffered, but because I was free from their toxic dynamic. I hadn't destroyed their life, I had simply stopped paying for their fantasy life. The crisis was not mine, it was the consequence of their lifelong deceit and manipulation. I deleted the communication from the friend, and then I blocked the friend too, a difficult but necessary move to maintain my no-contact rule. I needed to ensure that no part of their chaos could pull me back in. My peace was my most valuable asset now. I wondered briefly about Brooke. Would she learn from this? Or would she eventually become the new financial lifeline they sought? I hoped she would choose freedom. But that was her choice to make. I had saved myself, I couldn't save her. Their crisis was the painful price of my freedom. What unexpected turn did my relationship with Uncle Ted take, and how did I finally spend my next Thanksgiving, the ultimate symbol of my complete healing and new, authentic life? The ultimate truth about my parents' situation didn't come from me, it came from the consequences. Richard's boat repo and the impending foreclosure were public knowledge now. The relatives who had judged me were starting to ask questions about the generous Brooke. Uncle Ted, still my lifeline, provided the closure. He had been quietly confirming the truth. Richard had been covering debts, not retiring happily. He told the relatives who asked that the monthly $5,000 stopped because the provider, me, was publicly insulted. The narrative shifted. I was no longer the cruel daughter. I was the essential pillar who finally withdrew their support after years of abuse. The family saw the full scope of my parents' deception and the cost of maintaining the golden child myth. This external confirmation that the family knew the truth, not just my friends, was the final step in my emotional unburdening. I didn't have to defend myself anymore. My revenge, carried out with silence and a single banking click, had spoken louder than any scream. My only continuing link was Ted. He wasn't a spy. He was the last person who cared enough to ensure I wasn't scapegoated again. He was the honest family I always deserved. Our conversations moved from reports of their chaos to discussions about my new life and future. The full, shocking truth was finally known by all. How did my newfound relationship with Uncle Ted flourish, and what was the beautiful, symbolic way I chose to spend my first Thanksgiving completely free from my toxic family? A year passed. The silence was no longer aggressive, it was peaceful. I had traveled, started a new investment portfolio with my savings, and most importantly, I finally felt comfortable in my own skin. I was Sarah, the successful finance director, and my success was purely mine. My relationship with Uncle Ted flourished. He became the true family member I had always needed, supportive, non-judgmental, and honest. We met often, and he was the living proof that a real connection could exist outside the toxic structure I had grown up in. As for Richard and Carol, Ted informed me they lost the house, downsized drastically, and were living off Social Security. Brooke was struggling but finally financially independent, a painful but necessary consequence. They never reached out again. As the next Thanksgiving approached, Ted called me. "Sarah, my son and I are having a small, quiet dinner. No drama, just gratitude. Would you like to come? We'd love for you to join our family." It wasn't just a dinner invitation, it was an invitation into an authentic family structure. I didn't hesitate. "I'd love to, Ted." "Thank you." That single word, "thank you," held the weight of my past struggles and my future hope. The next Thanksgiving, I sat at Ted's table. There was no pretense, no gossip, no financial scorekeeping. Just good food, quiet laughter, and genuine acceptance. I didn't worry about dropping a napkin or saying the wrong thing. I was finally, truly, safe. My family taught me that love can be conditional, but my revenge taught me that peace is non-negotiable. I didn't destroy them, I saved myself. The $5,000 was the catalyst, but my courage was the real weapon. I found my family, my peace, and my freedom. What steps did I take next to build a completely new, authentic life far from the shadow of the Jenkins family? And what is the one crucial piece of advice I can give to anyone stuck in a cycle of family financial abuse? My first few months of no contact were not silent. They were filled with desperate attempts to breach my boundaries. Every email, every text from a cousin, every message carried the same toxic demand: return to service. Their primary emotion wasn't sorrow, it was entitlement. Richard, having lost his boat and facing foreclosure, sent me a physical letter via certified mail. He didn't apologize for the $60 incident. Instead, he wrote, "Your spite and selfishness destroyed everything we built. Your mother is sick because of your lack of filial duty." Carol's message, delivered through a tearful neighbor, was pure self-pity. "Tell Sarah that she has left her poor, sick mother to fend for herself. She always resented her father's success. She chose money over family. She broke her own mother's heart just to prove a point." This was the final, critical piece of closure. They couldn't, or wouldn't, acknowledge their deceit. Their need to be the victim was so profound that they would rather face bankruptcy than admit they had lied about the $5,000 and used me as the invisible ATM. The ultimate blame wasn't just directed at me. It was also directed at the world for failing to support their grand illusion. Their extravagant life was a facade, and when the money, my money, stopped, the structure collapsed. They blamed the maintenance worker, me, for the failed architecture. Fortunately, Ted's quiet dissemination of the truth was working. More relatives realized the extent of the financial abuse. They saw Richard and Carol struggling to afford basic utilities, contradicting their lavish image. The blame shifted from me to my parents' decades of pretense. The foreclosure proceeded. Ted sent me the listing link. The family home, once a symbol of my parents' success, was sold far below market value under duress. It was a stark, tangible representation of the collapse of their life built on deceit. I read Richard's final letter, recognized the pathological inability to take responsibility, and shredded it. I did not respond. I did not feel guilt. I felt the deep, clean satisfaction of someone who finally paid off a generational debt of emotional servitude. Brooke, meanwhile, was forced to support them financially with her meager income. She learned the hard way that the golden child status came with an invisible contract to clean up the mess when the real provider left. She was now the ATM, not the celebrated daughter. My withdrawal exposed their system. They didn't lose their comfort because I was cruel, they lost it because they were morally bankrupt. They valued a fake status and a constant financial stream over the actual human being providing it. That was their sin, and the consequences were theirs alone. I focused my energy on the positive, my growing portfolio, my promotion at work, and my developing relationship with Uncle Ted. I replaced the toxicity with tangible, authentic progress. The constant push and pull of family drama was finally over. The sweetest part of my revenge wasn't seeing them suffer, it was realizing that I was completely, irrevocably free. I was no longer defined by their need, their criticism, or their financial lies. I was the architect of my own peace. I learned that the only closure that matters comes from accepting the truth, setting the boundary, and walking away without looking back. That is how you win a family revenge story, you choose yourself. I chose myself, and the price of my peace was the end of their facade. What is the one critical piece of advice I would give to my younger self, and what steps did I take to ensure I never, ever repeat the financial and emotional patterns of my family? The extended family split into two distinct camps. One side, informed by Ted, understood my position and pitted my parents' delusion. The other side, the emotional manipulators, rallied around Richard and Carol, seeing me as the heartless villain who broke the family bank. Aunt Mildred, Carol's sister, was the most vocal. She found my new, unlisted number through an old address book. "Sarah, how can you sleep at night? You have a big job, and your poor mother has nothing. You need to give them money for a small rental. You owe them. Where is your Christian charity, Mildred? I supported them for years." They lied about it and publicly humiliated me over $60. Their current situation is the result of their own financial decisions. Not my duty. You are welcome to give them money, but I won't. Mildred ignored the facts. They are your parents. Family is all that matters. You are tearing us apart. You are choosing money over blood. I could hear Carol sobbing dramatically in the background. It was the same old, tired performance. The sound of Carol crying used to paralyze me with guilt. Now, it sounded exactly like what it was, a calculated, performative noise designed to activate my wallet. The emotional button they had relied on for decades was finally short-circuited. Mildred, I am done. I am changing my number to protect my peace. You are choosing to believe a lie. I wish you and them the best. I hung up before she could respond. That was the last direct voice I heard from that side of the family. I understood why they supported Richard and Carol. To admit my parents were manipulative meant they had to admit their own relationships might also be built on a lie. It was easier for them to demonize me than to face their uncomfortable truth. I immediately changed my number. The new phone felt light and clean. No one had it except Ted and a few trusted friends. The crisis was over. The attempts to pull me back were finished. My reward wasn't their suffering. It was the ability to live a life free of performance and financial bondage. I cut the last toxic thread and chose my peace. What were the definitive steps I took to ensure I never repeated their financial and emotional patterns? And what is the one piece of crucial advice I would give to anyone in this situation? The ultimate measure of my recovery wasn't the vengeance, it was the quiet revolution in my own financial habits. I no longer saved money out of fear or guilt, I saved with clear purpose. My entire relationship with money transformed from a tool for conditional love into a foundation for true independence. Free from the constant drain, my career exploded. I diversified my portfolio, started my own high-value side consulting business, and achieved my goal of becoming a CFO before 35. My success was purely mine, and it required no external validation from my parents. My therapy helped me build better emotional boundaries, especially in dating. I quickly identified partners who sought a provider or a savior. I sought true connection, honesty, and shared responsibility, a stark contrast to the transactional dynamic I grew up in. I replaced the chaotic family unit with a chosen community of friends who valued reciprocity and kindness. This new family celebrated my wins and supported my losses without the hidden agenda. They were the living antidote to the poison of my past. The next Thanksgiving, and the ones after, became a sacred new tradition at Uncle Ted's house. It was a modest gathering, full of genuine warmth, where everyone contributed food, not money. The focus was gratitude, not performance. Ted often reminded me, "You didn't abandon them, Sarah. They abandoned you the moment they started lying about who was really supporting them. They cut themselves off from reality and you simply severed the wire to their dependency machine." Richard and Carol were living in a small, rented apartment, still blaming me to anyone who listened. Brooke was the new, burdened provider. I felt a distant pity for their inability to change, but absolutely no guilt. My job was not to rescue, but to thrive. If I could talk to the Sarah of 5 years ago, I'd say this: your worth is intrinsic. It is not calculated by your paycheck or by the approval of toxic people. The family that requires you to sacrifice your peace is not your family. That simple truth took a painful, public confrontation to learn. Start saving $5,000 for yourself, not for them. Create a financial escape route first, then build your emotional walls. Don't waste another holiday trying to buy love. The only person you can save is yourself, and your freedom is your greatest asset. To avoid repeating their pattern, I established an ironclad rule: never loan money to family or friends if you cannot afford to give it away and consider it a gift. My financial decisions are based on data and long-term security, not emotion or short-term duty. I learned that no is a complete sentence and requires no justification. My peace was my most valuable asset. And protecting it meant saying no firmly and without apology to any demand that violated my boundaries. Silence is often the strongest answer to toxic chaos. Today, years later, I sit in my quiet, beautiful apartment with a partner who sees and values the real me. My life is small, but it is deeply authentic. The chaos of the Jenkins family is a distant, cautionary tale that no longer holds any power. I am grateful for the $60 bill that exposed the generational lie and for the courage it took to walk away. It wasn't the sum of the money that mattered, it was the value I finally placed on my own well-being. That was the real victory. To anyone dealing with financial family abuse, your sanity is worth more than their comfort. Your peace is non-negotiable. Don't seek revenge, seek freedom. You owe it to your future self to break the cycle and build a life of genuine connection. Once you cut the ties, don't look back. You will find the love and acceptance you deserve, maybe not where you started, but with the people you choose. Healing is not a destination, it's the beautiful, peaceful life you build after the battle is won. The story of the $60 bill that cost a family a $5,000 monthly stipend is complete. It's a harsh reminder that toxicity always carries a massive price tag. My name is Sarah Jenkins, and thank you for listening to my story of financial revenge and ultimate peace. I found my peace, and I built my life. What steps can you take today to start building your own safety net? And what is the single most important mindset shift required to say no to family financial demands without feeling crippling guilt? Life settled into a rhythm I had never known, quiet, productive, and drama-free. The constant adrenaline of trying to manage my parents' expectations faded. I learned to relax without the anxiety that a financial bomb was about to drop. My sister Brooke faded into the past. We had no contact. I knew she was deeply immersed in the mess, now performing the role of the reluctant provider. It was a cycle I had broken, but she was trapped. I wished her well, but I knew I couldn't sacrifice my future for her realization. Uncle Ted was the only bridge. He eventually told me they had moved to a small, two-bedroom apartment. Richard complained constantly about the lack of status, and Carol cried about not having a pool. Their suffering was about image, not survival. One day, Ted brought up something shocking. "Sarah, I need to tell you one last thing. When you went to college, your parents took out a loan using your trust fund collateral. They didn't pay it back. They knew you were financially locked in. It wasn't just the $5,000 monthly payments. It was the calculated, decades-long scheme to ensure I would always be their funding source. They hadn't just used me, they had strategically crippled my starting line to guarantee their finish line." Surprisingly, I didn't feel rage, I felt vindicated. The scale of the abuse removed all residual guilt. Ted's honesty was the final, critical piece of evidence. My decision to cut them off wasn't a punishment, it was survival from predatory behavior. I realized I had mourned the loss of my parents years ago, when I first understood the lie. The physical severing of the $5,000 was just a formality. Now, the emotional ties, based on the idea of a loving family, had completely dissolved, replaced by a deep sense of self-respect. My life is now guided by integrity, not duty. I am honest in my finances, transparent in my relationships, and responsible for my own emotional well-being. This life is harder, maybe, but it is authentically mine, built without the help or the hindrance of the Jenkins name. Uncle Ted became the anchor of my chosen family. His honesty, even when painful, was the antithesis of my parents' deceit. He taught me that family is defined by support and truth, not biology or debt. We planned a trip together, the first holiday I truly looked forward to. The last small knot of guilt, the fear that maybe I had overreacted, dissolved completely with Ted's final revelation. They weren't just flawed, they were calculated predators. The only debt I had was to myself, to honor my boundaries and protect the peace I had fought so hard to earn. Brooke remains a cautionary tale. She still sends Christmas cards signed the Jenkins family, a desperate attempt to maintain the facade, even as she bankrolls their small, miserable life. It proves that money doesn't buy happiness, and toxicity is a self-sustaining cycle. The ultimate lesson is that the value of the $60 incident was immeasurable. It was the pebble that started the avalanche, revealing the mountain of lies underneath. It forced me to choose between being the family's hero and their slave, or being my own hero. My vengeance was achieved not through their suffering, but through my freedom. I stopped their game, walked off the board, and started a new, better game entirely. The best revenge isn't living well, it's living truthfully. If you are sitting there feeling the weight of conditional love and financial obligation, know this: the door to your freedom is unlocked. You just have to find the courage to step through it. My name is Sarah Jenkins, and I successfully navigated my family's financial maze to find peace. I hope my story empowers you to reclaim your own narrative and choose freedom over obligation. Thank you for walking this journey with me. I found freedom by choosing myself, but my journey of self-discovery didn't end there. What are the top 3 red flags you must learn to identify in toxic family financial dynamics? And how can you prepare yourself mentally and legally before you finally cut the cord? We've reached the end of my story, but for many of you, the battle is just beginning. My journey from the Jenkins family's financial slave to a free, successful CFO wasn't magic. It was a conscious choice to prioritize my sanity over their stability. The single most important mindset shift required is this: you are not a financial institution. Your love is not measured in dollars. You must reframe the narrative from filial duty to self-preservation. Their poverty is the result of their choices, not your failing. Red flag number 1, the perpetual emergency. Toxic families live in a state of constant, manufactured crisis. The boiler breaks, the car explodes, the health bill arrives, all immediately demanding your intervention. This pattern ensures you never have a moment to breathe or build your own future. Red flag number 2, complete lack of transparency. You are funding a black hole. They demand money but never provide proof of true need or show you their budget. They conceal assets or income while constantly demanding more. My $60 bill exposure was the direct result of this secrecy. Red flag number 3, the emotional blackmail. This is the oldest trick. They weaponize illness, age, or family love to manipulate you. Phrases like "you're breaking your mother's heart" or "who will take care of us when we are old" are not pleas, they are demands disguised as love. You need an escape plan. First, establish a separate emergency fund, call it the Freedom Fund. Make it equal to 6 months of your own living expenses, stored in an account they cannot touch. This fund is your shield when you finally say no. Second, legally protect yourself. Change your bank account passwords, update your wills, and remove your parents as beneficiaries on any accounts, including life insurance or 401ks. Consult a financial lawyer to ensure they cannot exploit old loans or legal loopholes. When you are ready to cut the cord, use this simple script: "My financial situation has changed, and I can no longer provide you with money. This decision is final. I wish you well." Do not negotiate. Do not justify. Do not engage. Repeat the script if necessary, then go no contact. Be prepared for the flying monkeys, the relatives who will contact you on their behalf, just like Aunt Mildred. They are not mediators, they are messengers of manipulation. Your answer is simple: "My relationship is private, and I will not discuss their finances with you." The guilt will hit you, possibly harder than the first time. This is a trauma response. Allow yourself to feel the grief for the family you should have had. Grieve the loss of the illusion, not the loss of the reality. This is part of the healing. Finally, invest in your chosen family, the friends, mentors, and partners who value you unconditionally, like Uncle Ted. This network provides the safety and connection you need to fully transition into your new chapter. True family is built on respect, not blood. Remember, the goal isn't revenge. It's peace. Your success, your happiness, and your freedom from their chaotic narrative are the ultimate victory. You broke the cycle of abuse that defined your lineage. That is a legacy far greater than any financial inheritance. The story of the $60 bill that led to my total freedom is complete. I chose integrity over servitude, and I hope you find the courage to do the same. Thank you for listening to my journey from financial victim to the architect of my own peace. I found freedom by choosing myself. How do you start building your freedom fund today? And what is the single most important first step you can take to legally protect your assets from family exploitation? If my story of the $60 bill resonated with you, you're not alone. I know the paralyzing fear of a family demanding your financial and emotional ruin. But here is the truth, the core message I want you to carry: your worth is not negotiable. Lesson 1. Recognize the lie. The greatest act of revenge is recognizing the lie. My parents' love was transactional, not unconditional. Once you accept that the relationship is based on finance, not affection, the emotional power they hold over you collapses. Don't fight the lie, accept it and walk away. Lesson 2. Financial foundation. Build your financial escape route first. My freedom fund was my shield. You cannot set emotional boundaries until you have financial ones. Start today. Put aside money that is absolutely off limits to everyone else. Financial independence fuels emotional courage. If my story of the $60 bill resonated with you, you're not alone. I know the paralyzing fear of a family demanding your financial and emotional ruin. But here is the truth, the core message I want you to carry: your worth is not negotiable. Lesson 1. Recognize the lie. The greatest act of revenge is recognizing the lie. My parents' love was transactional, not unconditional. Once you accept that the relationship is based on finance, not affection, the emotional power they hold over you collapses. Don't fight the lie, accept it and walk away. Lesson 2. Financial foundation. Build your financial escape route first. My freedom fund was my shield. You cannot set emotional boundaries until you have financial ones. Start today. Put aside money that is absolutely off limits to everyone else. Financial independence fuels emotional courage.